Good afternoon. I want to spend some time today talking about ways that we can prove ourselves wrong. So I want to start by asking, how much time do you spend trying to prove yourself wrong? And maybe this feels counterintuitive because we're all at a product development conference where we're all interested in building great products and trying to prove that those products work for our customers. So maybe trying to find the data that supports our latest hypotheses, or researching what is it that users love about our products. Or maybe it's proving that that latest software patch that you rolled out actually solves that pesky bug that's been lingering around. But if you're anything like I used to be, you may actually be spending too much time trying to prove yourself right, and you would be better off trying to prove yourself wrong. Because I found in my career that this small shift of mindset has made all the difference. Because I find it leads to better debates, better strategies, and I believe that by striving to prove our assumptions wrong, it is what ultimately allows us to build products that are useful, unique, and profitable. Now, I'm not pretending to suggest that this is a new idea. Proving ourselves wrong is at the heart of the scientific method. The late Richard Feynman once said, "We are trying to prove ourselves wrong as quickly as possible, because only in that way can we find progress." Now, if you're not familiar with his work, Richard Feynman was a theoretical physicist, worked on the Manhattan Project, and did a lot of things in quantum mechanics. And that's all way over my head, but I think what I find so inspiring about what he says here, and something that I believe we should bring to product development, is this power of trying to prove yourself wrong. And what he's speaking to is the difference of evidence that is required when you're trying to prove something right versus trying to prove something wrong. When we're trying to prove ourselves right, then it doesn't matter how elegant or beautiful our theory or hypothesis of user behavior may be. We can spend our entire life running one more experiment, one more test to collect that experimental evidence that what we predicted our users would do is what we actually see them do in reality. But on the flip side, if we're trying to prove ourselves wrong, it only takes one counterexample to recognize that our hypothesis is a little bit off. There's something about human behavior we don't quite understand yet. And I find that exciting because it's in those moments that we can start to dig in, find deeper insights for our products, and ultimately build better products for our user. So today, I would like to share 3 challenges that I have faced in my career and how using the small mindset shift of trying to prove myself wrong has made all the difference. So for the first challenge, I want to take us back to 2017. I was at that time the director of software engineering for the front end of Booking.com. So I was leading about 35 cross-functional teams, all focused on trying to make it easier to discover, select, and ultimately book a great place to stay for their travels. Now, at Booking.com, we really use the experimentation method to its fullest. We run a lot of experiments. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. We take tremendous pride in our data-driven approach. And so we've built our own A/B test tooling that allows any team to test anything on the products. And then they can observe the changes in customer behavior and then make decisions. And this gives us a tremendous amount of data. But that data only takes us so far because data is not always actually black and white. A human still has to make the decision, is this the right thing for our users? Is this the right thing for our business or our accommodation partners? Should we keep this change in our product or not? And because those types of decisions are human, we also try to create a culture of healthy debate, of peer review, to really follow in that scientific method, so that any change that one team makes can be seen by any other team. And this helps on several fronts. One, it means that when something works and is successful, other teams can quickly copy it. It'll spread like wildfire across our product, helping more and more users. But on the other side, if we see something that maybe we don't understand, we don't agree with, then we can question and challenge and help to make the decisions that we're making for our users better. But these types of debates require perspective. We need to be able to look at things from different angles different cultures, different types of users. And having different perspectives isn't always easy. I know I sometimes have struggled with it, of my own emotions, my own opinion, my own bias coming to the forefront and holding me back and holding the discussion back. I want to tell you about one of those times. And it was all because of a small little change that one of the teams made. And they made a change here on what we call the hotel card. So this is how we show search results to our users. If you're searching for hotels, you'll see a whole list of these cards for different hotels. Now, where they were experimenting with was on this little tag called Just Booked. They were trying to make it easier to reassure users that other users were also looking at this hotel. So using a little bit of social proof to say, hey, you're looking at this hotel, don't worry. Other users have also looked at this hotel and they found it to be a good choice. Maybe it's a good choice for you too. That was the goal. That was the outcome that this team was trying to solve for. Now, what sparked the debate with this change was the magic number. They decided to use 24 hours as a threshold of when we would label a hotel as just booked or not. So what this means is that if the hotel had been booked in the last day, we would label it for other users as being just booked. And for myself and my product counterpart at the time, we weren't completely comfortable with this 24-hour threshold. We were wondering, like, what is the right threshold? Like, is it fair to say that something that that was booked almost a day ago has just happened? Personally, for me, I was really worried about this. I was thinking, are we being disingenuous with our users? It seemed obvious to me that if something has happened a day ago, I can't say that it has just happened. Now, you can maybe imagine that if I'm going in one-sided like that, the discussions with the team did not go very well because they had the data. They had the conversion metrics that showed, hey, more users are finding a place to stay. And so it was the team's conversion data versus leadership opinion. It's like, how do you solve that type of problem in a culture where we pride ourselves on being data-driven? And so our debates and discussion, it was just going in circles and circles and circles until one person asked a simple little question. What is the counter argument? And this was an aha moment for me in my career when I started to realize that I wasn't able to argue against myself because I was saying just books, that's not good. And so as a group, we started to kind of play with this idea. It's like, okay, we're talking about hotels. Let's look at other decisions people make in their lives. What about eating lunch? Just had lunch. And so we start to kind of create this balance and these scales of perspectives of saying, okay, yeah, it seems kind of odd actually to say that if you just had lunch and that happened a day ago, that seems weird. But you may be saying, okay, Joseph, you just found another argument for your own idea. You need to look the other way. And that's what we tried to do. Is, okay, let's look at bigger decisions. And so maybe buying a house. So this kind of in the group, we started to realize, okay, yeah, this doesn't seem so odd that if maybe a friend of yours bought a house a few weeks ago and they're still saying to other people, hey, I just bought a house. It's like, it's a big decision. And so we started to realize that there's a spectrum here and it wasn't just black and white. And it helped me realize, okay, I wasn't seeing the whole picture here. But also through the discussion, the team started to realize they weren't seeing everything. And so ultimately what we were able to do is find, okay, we're not seeing everything right away. So we needed to find the counter arguments and use that kind of as a signal to recognize, okay, are we moving this debate forward? And so I now like to use this as a flag that if I see debates just going in circles or checking myself, like, okay, am I able to actually argue against myself? Because if I can do that, then I recognize, okay, I've shifted beyond my own emotions and bias. And now I'm trying to find the best decision for this situation. And I also like to watch my teams. And if I'm facilitating with the group, it's like, okay, try to pull the same type of thinking out by asking, what is the counter argument? How can you prove yourself wrong? Because then we can help move beyond our biases and ultimately then create better debates and better decisions. So that first challenge was about better debates. The second challenge was about creating better strategies. So the year was still 2017, and I was still working on the front end of Booking.com, but I had made a transition in my role. I was now the director of product at Booking.com. And so this meant my responsibilities had changed. It wasn't so much about how we were building what we were building, but now I was helping to guide teams to make sure we were building towards the right strategies, building the best products we could for our users. But there was a pattern I was starting to see, with lots of teams really just talking about how many tests they were running, or how many experiments they had run. To where a team may say, hey, I've run 20 experiments, or another team, I've run 50 experiments. And they almost were using it, we were using it almost like a vanity metric, that it made us feel good. Like we ran lots of tests. We obviously must be learning lots of things. And then we'd ask, what did we learn? And too often to be honest, I was disappointed with what we were saying. It was like, our answer was, well, we ran a lot of things and nothing worked. And then it'd be, well, what comes next? It was, well, we'll try a lot of different things and see what happens then. And so it felt like we weren't actually focusing on the right types of learnings. We were just kind of running sometimes in a circle and circle and circle. And so I started to work with the teams to say, okay, how can we actually focus on the learnings that matter, the learnings that move us forward? And so what I found helped was in structuring our evidence and assumptions. So starting with these two things. What is the evidence we have for this problem space? Quantitative, qualitative, hard data, the things we consider to be true about this problem space. Okay, we have that, great. Now let's look at the assumptions. What are the beliefs, the hypotheses about this problem space that we're operating with? Because I find that it's the combination of both the evidence and our assumptions that informs our strategy. And strategy to me is simply a plan. How do we get from where we are today to where we want to be to achieve our goal? And it's fundamentally about these evidence and assumptions that go into that. So what we were able to do then is say, okay, we have this evidence, we have these assumptions. Let's now rank the assumptions and rank them by risk to the strategy. And what I mean by this is that number one assumption, that number one risk, if we were to prove that assumption wrong, we would need to change the whole strategy. Because now we're able to see, okay, what is it we need to learn to really understand if we're on the right path? These are the learnings that are going to matter. Because now by trying to say, okay, assumption number one, let's use this robust debate that we've developed. Let's look for the counter arguments and the perspectives to figure out, okay, what kind of test could actually prove this wrong? Let's go try those. Because then if we're able to actually scratch off that assumption, it is fantastic. Because now we know we were on the wrong path. So we've short-circuited those circles we were running before. And now we've got a better direction because we know, don't go that way, explore this space. And so this was great because now you're able to get to your right strategy faster. And we're also able to sometimes find, hey, we've tested these assumptions. It seems like we actually are onto something with this. We can actually let's move this actually now into the evidence column. Because when we move and collect more evidence, then we're actually building more confidence again in our strategy. So the key point here was about clarifying which learnings matter most. And the most important is that focus on trying to prove yourself wrong. Because by trying to prove our assumptions wrong, we were able to build better strategies for our products. So again, the first challenge was about creating better debates. The second challenge was about creating better strategies. The third challenge I faced was about building better products. Now, we'll fast forward a little bit to 2018. I was still the director of product in the front end for Booking.com. But now I was seeing a different type of pattern appear. And it was one of having too much of a short-term view in what we were prioritizing and investing in. What I mean by this is that we were jumping from small problem to small problem. We weren't showing the determination to actually try to solve bigger user problems. And what do I mean by a big user problem and a small user problem? So a small user problem would be like if we think back to the example before about just booked, changing text, changing color, changing copy. Like these are little things about usability. What I wanted us to invest more in is actual user outcomes. how do we help customers find the right accommodation that meets their expectations, that they're going to enjoy on their trip? How do we make sure that they're able to filter and find just the right thing? How do we make sure that their special requests that they make to the hotel, that they're actually fulfilled, or they get notification if it can't be? So these types of bigger challenges. And the root cause of this that I started to understand was that there was too much focus on the success rate of the learnings, the success rate of experiments. That teams felt like to be successful, they needed to show that a significant amount of the experiments they ran were put full on, that we kept the change. So they were optimizing for the success rate. But what I wanted to happen was for us to take a step back and really try to prove ourselves wrong so we could solve those bigger problems. But I was struggling to communicate my expectations. I couldn't kind of, like I would have these conversations, but translating kind of my thinking model wasn't working. What I found actually made this possible was to structure my thinking with what I ultimately came to call the outcome canvas. So this was a way for me to codify my product thinking, how I like to think about a problem and approach it when solving it for our users. And it all begins with the outcome. This is the goal. What is the difference that we want to make in the life of the user? Because this is how we know, okay, are we building something that's useful and unique? And then let's think about the sizing. Okay, how many people can we help with this? Because that outcome and that sizing, we start to get a sense of like, okay, is this the type of problem we want to invest in? Is it a big enough problem that's going to be worth persevering and worth kind of trying to sort out and figure out what the right strategy is? Next, outputs. Let's think about those short-term signals and metrics. How are we going to know that the users are actually reaching the outcome that we want? Now, this middle bit is going to be familiar because this is the strategic learning loop I talked about before. I really feel like this is the most important part of the canvas because this is the learning loop of trying to prove ourselves wrong. But again, we want to be determined to work here because we've figured out, hey, the outcome, the sizing, this is a meaty problem. Like this is good for our users and our business. We want to be working on this. So let's take the time to figure out what assumptions do we need to prove wrong? What is the right strategy here? And then to think about, okay, what is the short-term focus of our team right now? What's currently in here? And maybe you could think about this like, what's our current sprint or what are we working on this quarter? But then to also be clear about the long-term roadmap. Look a bit further ahead. And again, this is based on our strategy. What are the milestones that we need to reach? Maybe milestone 1, milestone 2, 3, etc. And again, we have confidence that this is the right way because of the work we've done to try to prove our assumptions wrong to build the right strategy. Now to bring it all together and to really make it clear for my teams that to be successful, it wasn't just about the success rate of an experiment. There were going to be 3 buckets of impact that I wanted to see. And I believe that high-performing teams will be able to show learnings, short-term impact, and long-term impact. So learnings, again, it's about the better strategy. It doesn't matter how many tests you run or experiments. What matters is, are we iterating towards a better and better strategy? So those assumptions being invalidated, the evidence being collected. Then let's look at the short-term impact. What is the value that we are creating for users today? And again, we see that in the output signals, those KPIs, those metrics. And then let's talk about the long-term, the value that we are creating for users later. And again, I see this as the progress against those roadmap milestones. So how are we moving towards our strategic future? And what I found helped was then to ask teams, whenever we do status updates, let's talk about all 3. Because then it made it more clear and it made it safer to say, hey, yeah, we've done a lot of learnings, but these are learnings that matter because they're actually moving us in the right direction. And I've also found that different products at different maturity are going to have a different balance of these 3. I often don't expect that a team is going to have equal amounts of learnings, short-term and long-term, but it's going to depend on where the product is in its phase. But ultimately, the takeaway here is to structure the thinking with the outcome canvas, because by piecing together all these elements, we're able to more clearly see the different types of impact that we are developing that ultimately helps us build better products. So really, the key message I want to give to you today is try to prove yourself wrong. Look for the counter arguments so you can have better debates. Clarify for yourself and your teams which learnings matter so you can build better strategies. And use an outcome canvas to create better products by pulling it all together. Now, I have found this thinking model in the outcome canvas has helped me. And if you'd be interested in trying it for yourself, there is a download available on a LinkedIn article that I've written, or you can use the QR code here to scan and get a direct link. Now, I would love to connect with anyone that would like to, and particularly if you disagree with some of the things I've said today, I would love to chat and hear your counter argument. Thank you.